You know where the term the October surprise or the October surprise theory comes from. It comes from a deal that was supposedly struck between the Ronald Reagan campaign and Iran just before the American elections in 1980, where in exchange for whatever, the Iranians were going to hold on 66 American hostages who were held in Iran at the time. That's a different political context we can discuss later. What happened is the Iranians did, and the hostages were not released until after the elections. That resulted in Ronald Reagan winning the elections and Jimmy Carter, who was the incumbent, losing the elections. The same thing is happening right now. Well, more or less, the same spirit of that event is taking place right now, where Netanyahu is holding off on making any final decisions regarding Gaza until the American elections. Because he knows that, in his mind at least, not in my mind, but in his thinking, he thinks that Trump is better for Israel. Because Trump is going to give Israel not just weapons and arms, as the Democrats have done, but also he is going to support whatever vision for Gaza and the West Bank Israel has. We already know that Trump has done so much for Israel, more like a genie granting wishes when he was in office over the course of one term. So that's the Israeli thinking. Let's just hold off. Now the Democrats, belatedly, as dumb as they are, they just realized that this is the Israeli plan. This is not about the proposal, it's not about the Philadelphia and its Sarim and all of that. It has nothing to do with this. Because you know, the Philadelphia corridor is something that was invented later on in the war. If you go to the early news reports, and I have reported on this around the clock since the beginning, there were very little references in the beginning over the Philadelphia. That was just something that far-right ministers like Smotrich started talking about, and eventually Netanyahu jumped on the whole Philadelphia thing. But now it's all as if the very existence of Israel is all dependent on Philadelphia. But it's just they are buying time. And this is why two important events happened today. Number one, this headline news from Politico, but also published elsewhere, that says Trump tells Jewish Republicans Israel is gone if Harris is elected. So he is now trying to maximize on his support for Israel among Jewish leaders and Jewish Republicans and Jewish people in the United States. But also today, another important event, and that is the US administration, the Biden administration, has decided to postpone indefinitely a proposal that they have marketed as take it or leave it to both Hamas and Israel to end the war in Gaza. Why did they do that? They did that because they knew that Netanyahu is not going to reject it immediately. He's going to say, we reject several parts of it, but certain points are interesting and we are willing to engage in. And I'm going to send you a delegations to Cairo, to Doha, to Rome, to wherever, so that we can talk about it another week or 2 months or two until we reach the November elections. So Netanyahu wants to delay, and by delaying he deflates the momentum of protests that is happening in Israel right now. About 750,000 people, some people say 1 million, have protested in Israel today. 500,000 in Tel Aviv by itself, massive protests in Haifa, but also protests all across the country. So by accepting partially the American proposal, Netanyahu would be allowed to delay and the protest will peter out. So the Americans are now counting on one thing. Let's not put a proposal forward and not just hope that the Israelis themselves are going to be the ones who topple Netanyahu, because let's be honest, the Biden administration is the most cowardly in history. They tell Netanyahu, stop your war, and they are feeding him with the bunker busters that have killed and maimed tens of thousands of Palestinians. So this is a failed leadership, a complete, utter and miserable failure, this democratic leadership, and Harris is not going to be any better. And she, in her defense, she never said that I'm going to be doing anything different than what Biden has done to help and love and support Israel. That's not the issue. The issue is, don't expect anything between now and November. And I think the only decisive factor, or two decisive factors, is the resistance in Gaza. But number two, the Israelis themselves. Will they be able to topple Netanyahu or not before the elections? And if they can't, then Netanyahu is going to tell Trump, you may market the idea now that the Democrats are the biggest foreign policy failures in the history of this country. And indeed, they are. And they deserve everything that is coming to them. Thanks for listening.